Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think I know most of you, so we have Daphne on as well. Y'all probably have talked to her from our HR team. And then me, I'm Rory. I pretty much head up the HR and payroll and employee benefits for Magnet HR that partners with US Property. So um, we will go ahead and get started and let me hold on. I think I'm going to move this over here. All right. Slideshow. Actually, I'm going to do this where, let's see. Okay. I'm going to keep it. Oh no. Hold on. Do it? Okay. I may have to put it back over here. Are y'all able to see it now?
Yes.
Can you see it on your side? Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. So today we're going to go over corrective actions and performance improvement plans, which are better known as PIPs. Y'all are probably pretty aware of what those may be, but we're going to go over the details of what they are. So today we're going to go over the principles of disciplinary action, when to take disciplinary action, progressive disciplinary process, documenting disciplinary action, and the 5 W's of documentation, and then what a sample documentation looks like. So does anyone know what the 5 W's are? And I'm going to look at the chat as well. And this is kind of more of an interactive training. Please stop me, ask questions if you need to. So, all right, no response. Do you, Caitlin, know what the 5 W's are?
Yes, and you guys know too. So who? What? Anybody else?
When and why?
Where?
Yes.
Yeah. Who, what, when, where,
And
how?
why?
Yes. Very
Yep.
good.
Why is good. Yep. Perfect. Awesome. So corrective action plan, or a CAP, is documented process to accomplish the targeted outcomes for a resolution of an undesirable action. This includes corrective action or a performance improvement plan. And I wish y'all, if I could figure out how to put it on slideshow, I would, but I don't see my option to do that.
Click from beginning, maybe, Corey, over to the left.
Oh, here we go. Yay, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Okay. All right.
Yes.
Here. Yep. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So what employment actions require documentation? So really anything that, oh, and I can't see y'all either. Let me, shoot, that's why.
You got to pick one or the other, yeah.
Okay, well, Daphne, you're just gonna have to let me know if we have anything in the chat. So what require documentation? So it's gonna be demotions, promotions, change in job duties, training needs and accomplishments, bonus and merit increase, placing an employee on probation, suspension, and or termination. So basically, anything that involves changes with an employee, whether it's positive or negative, we're going to want to document. The reason is to have that backup, because if you ever need it, if an employee, sometimes if people get written up, right, they're unhappy. So they having that documentation as a manager, it supports you and as an organization. So should they go and try to file, say, unemployment or try to file an EEOC claim, you have that documentation to show what has occurred with that employee. So why is it negative? So corrective actions generally have a negative connotation. Managers don't want to do them. That's pretty true, right? Employees definitely don't want to get them. And a positive solution is to communicate effectively, make it well known to your employees what the process is. Every employee is valuable. So we want to use corrective actions because we want to keep and grow our employees. If we can retain them and train them up, is much better than having to go find new employees and train and find new employees and train and do it that way. So it's always better if you've got employees that can grow with the organization and your team to train them and lay out those, guidelines and goals for them. You want to be confident and prepared as a manager. Being unprepared is unprofessional and it'll cause more anxiety for you and the employee that you're working with. So what is a corrective action? So it's to correct a mistake or the actions that affects the business in an undesired way. So typically a one-time infraction of rules, behavior, or expectations. Mostly, if someone's got goals they haven't met. So in y'all's cases, right, if you're trying to lease up apartments and they haven't met the goal, or not calling out to some of your, prospects and tenants, that would be part of not following the expectations that are laid out for that employee. Not every mistake deserves a corrective action. There's opportunities to document and send communication, and we'll get to that in another slide, kind of what that would look like. Can you determine the cause of a mistake or action? So is it a training issue? Is it miscommunication? Is it negligence? Or is it a one-time incident, right? So we wouldn't write somebody up for excessive absenteeism if they've only had, were late twice in 3 months. So that's not really considered excessive, except excessive is going to be you've got someone calling in on a Friday and Monday on a weekly or every week, every other week basis. There are 4 steps in progressive discipline. So there's going to be verbal, written, final warning, or you want to implement a performance improvement plan. Suspension, those are pretty rare, but they do happen. And then of course, termination. So that verbal warning is going to be for anytime you have communication with that employee that you're laying out the ground rules, right? Or the goals or expectations. You want to document that and you want to follow up, maybe possibly an email, or you could have them sign something, right? So it's important to always document, and we'll get into why. So documentation, how are y'all currently documenting now? And I can't see the chat, so I'm gonna just go over here.
So have a counseling form. I think it's one, Rory, that Dee had implemented some time ago. So we just kind of stuck with it. It's got a layout on the top that says counseling, written warning, final warning. And it's got a few different options on the bottom of it, what it was for, then they can detail what the issue was that caused the counseling session. And then it also gives a section on the bottom that says what the employee will do to correct the action going forward.
Okay. All right, perfect. So that's good. And we have a form as well that, you can use or any of the managers can request and we'll help with that. So documentation. How are you currently documenting team meetings and conversations? So that's a question for the managers, right? Using official form to process and be more professional and less personal. And that's one of the things. So when we say less personal too, we want to keep more factual information into that documentation and not how you feel. So we know that as a manager, it's tough to manage employees, bottom line, right? That's one of the hardest things as a manager to do. But if you are struggling with an employee's behavior, keep it factual. So meaning you're not worried about how you're feeling at the time because it caused you to change your day up because maybe you're having to step in and cover their job rather than the fact that maybe they've called in, 6 times in the last 3 months. And that's something now you've got to go pull your timesheets to say, hey, they're really calling in pretty often. Let's figure out what those reasons are and why. And so we want to keep the information factual. And we'll get into the next slide and how to document. There's a example. So have the document filled out in advance for your meeting if you're having to, move to the next steps and corrective action. Be clear and concise and use facts, not feelings. So a great example. So this layout. So at the top, you'll see it's just your employees' information. Then you're going to choose what step you're on, whether it's the verbal, written, if it's a second written notice, final, suspension, or other would be termination. And then you can actually choose, what is the reason for this write-up. So maybe it is poor work for performance, or maybe it's, violating company policy or insubordination. And then you go into laying out what is the issue and putting that in a timeline. And we're going to go to the next slide and we're going to show you what that means. I think, hold on. All right. Can y'all see that? I know it's a little bit tiny. I can zoom in if I need to.
I think on this one, maybe do the slideshow view, and I think
All
that will
right.
zoom it in enough.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
So this is okay. So this is a sample. So this particular employee has unsatisfactory performance and has violated policy and procedures. We're not going to go through and read, word for word, but what it would look like to document and put it on a write-up, you're going to see that there's dates and events that have occurred throughout. So you can see on June 25th, there was communication. On June 28th, there was communication. July 9th and July 19th. So it kind of lays out. So if you can see, this actually leads up to termination, and this will show what has happened with that employee and why the company has chosen to terminate. It is so important to have this information because employees are getting savvy nowadays, right? And they will go to the EEOC. And a lot of times, while you think you've done nothing wrong as a manager, if how they present it to the EEOC shows anything that could violate EEOC rules, meaning age discrimination, any sort of type of discrimination, sexual harassment, anything that would violate ADA, those are the things that EEOC is going to recognize, and they're going to send that employee what's called a right to sue letter. So once that gets in the hands of that employee or past employee, they're taking that to an attorney, and then your organization is being sued, you as the manager are going to get pulled in to that lawsuit. And it's not that, again, that you've done anything wrong as the manager. It's the fact that the organization now has to go through the legal process, which is very costly at times, to work through the EEOC claim that was filed. So that's why the clearer the information, more factual you have, the better off you'll be in the long run, even if an EEOC claim was issued. So when you do go through that process of doing a write-up or corrective action, number one, if you are getting to that step, you want to make sure that HR, myself is involved, or Caitlin would be involved to go through that written process. We also will get into another slide as well as to, when you do document and you get it onto that corrective action form, that you want somebody to review it to make sure that it is, in line. And I always think about when we're documenting, we want to make sure that if this goes to court or trial in the federal courts for EEOC claim, that you're not going to get up there and be embarrassed that that's what you put in writing. And it will get to that point. I have seen cases like that, very few in my career of 25 years, but it has gotten to that point. Most companies want to settle before you get to trial because it is so expensive when you get there. Those cases are typically in the millions when you do go to federal courts. So you want to definitely, when you meet with employees, you want to after each meeting and discussion, you want to follow up your conversation with, via email or in writing that y'all did discuss, specific items, and make sure the employees understands this is when you discussed it, what you discussed, and that they acknowledge it. If they choose not to acknowledge, that's okay too. We're just going to write on there that they refuse to sign, and we're going to move forward. But as long as we document that, we want to ask them to acknowledge and ask them if they have any questions, and you want to document that as well. The benefits include builds relationships and creates alignment. You become a more credible leader, and you don't have to remember every detail. Are y'all doing okay? Do you have any questions?
Yes, if you guys have questions or examples, please ask. I know write-ups are a thing that managers don't want to do. We don't want to create friction with our employees, but we're definitely lacking there, I think. And maybe it's just we need some more confidence. So please, if you guys have any questions or scenarios, feel free to ask. It's an open space. Everybody's learning, and Rory is the absolute best in this HR stuff. Okay, so I definitely want you guys to ask if you have anything on your mind.
All right, we'll move to the next. So performance improvement plan. So we talked about corrective actions. So when do you put in place a performance improvement plan? I'm going to tell you, these are mostly going to be meant for those people who you want to save, right? And you typically know your employees are not going to be great employees in the first 90 days, right? That's kind of that trial period everybody talks about, is that 90-day period. But if you have somebody that's been with you a year, 2 years, and onwards, those people are pretty committed and dedicated to your organization. So we want to definitely try to improve their performance. And a lot of times too, right? People have issues that arise in their life. Maybe it's health issues. Maybe it's a child's going through some struggles at their school. And obviously that will always fall back on that person's performance. So open communication is first and foremost. You want to know what's going on, because if someone is normally a good performer, and exceeds expectations, and for some reason, all of a sudden, something has changed, definitely look into it. Don't jump to conclusions. It's always best to communicate with that employee and find out what may be going on, because that could solve a lot of problems. But for the PIPs, the performance improvement plans, you do want to put those in place. They look a little like, and I'm sorry I don't have an example of that. I should have pulled that one as well, but they look a little like the corrective actions, but more from a goal standpoint. You want to mark out timelines. So the performance improvement plan is a formal plan that outlines an employee's performance issues, specific steps for improvement, that typically lasts 30 to 45 days. The goal should always be to fix and not fire. So basically, I guess, Caitlin, can you give us some ideas on when you would want to improve expectations or goals?
Yes, that's a good one. So I'll use one that's pretty relevant in today's market and something that I see we could do better on. With the office, I know we've kind of been using the Elise AI. However, that doesn't eliminate our responsibility to follow up on leasing leads. So if we have a leasing person, let's say Ceci, for example, only because she's on my mind this morning, and Ceci is not following up on her prospects. Numbers are down, right? Leasing is troubling. We're not hitting our numbers, and occupancy is not trending well. That would be a good time to sit down and evaluate Ceci's performance as the leasing consultant. There are a lot of different factors in that. One of those that I think is being missed kind of across the board is following up on past prospects. So we would want to sit down with her, okay, talk about what her struggles are, what is happening, ask her if she feels like she's doing 100% of her job, right? You want to know if the employee really thinks, hey, oh yeah, I'm doing it, doing all the job. They're feeling good about it, or if they know, hey, yeah, I know I could be doing better. You want to see kind of if they know where they're falling short. And then you document. So one of the steps in the leasing position, in the job that you're required to do, is following up on your prospects. And I see that that's not happening. And from there, you would document and say, okay, here's the expectation. You follow up with them 24 hours, 48 hours, right? 72 hours. And this is what needs to happen going forward. And then you give her a timeline. Okay, let's revisit in 7 days and see how we're doing.
Okay, that's a great example. Yeah, definitely. And we would outline that in a performance improvement plan, which looks a little like the corrective action form. And that way the employee understands what their improvement plan looks like and what the expectation is that they need to follow and meet. So the next slide is benefits of using a PIP. So it reassures the employee will be provided feedback, a fair process, support, and an opportunity to improve. It empowers them to take ownership and become stronger. And with authentic, documented process, the risk of litigation is decreased and the employee's performance doesn't improve and termination occurs. So this would be a great example of you've done everything you can in your power as the manager to help this employee that's been with you, say 3 years, and they were really great, but maybe the last 6 months they've been just really struggling. There's no reason for it. Their performance has just declined. And you show that you've done what you could do. You implemented a PIP plan. You put in place a corrective action, and you then started following that progressive discipline because maybe that performance improvement plan didn't work. So then you had to move to the next steps, right? Which then potentially led up to termination. You have all of your documentation, and that is really what you need in case anything were to ever, pop up down the road. So employees actually have 180 days from the time of the event to file an EEOC claim that the EEOC could potentially recognize. Although that entire process is a long one anyway, could take a year. But again, if EEOC recognizes that it is violates EEOC rules and regulations and law, that they issue that right to sue, and then that becomes litigation. All right, we'll go to the next. So initiating a PIP is a serious undertaking, and it does mean that the employee will lose their job if they don't meet goals and standards. So just like what we talked about, right? You want to put in that performance improvement plan. It may then move to corrective action if needed. The commitment for both you and the employee. So you as the manager, you do have to follow up, communicate, make sure you're documenting, putting stuff in writing. You must schedule weekly meetings to ensure the progress is being made. And I would say weekly may not be, maybe like Caitlin said, it could be 48 hours, right? And whatever those goals are that you have to follow up on. If they have, 2 weeks that they have to meet certain goals, then you would meet every 2 weeks over 45 days. Don't waste yours or your employee's time if you can't commit to their success and hold the employee accountable. Before you write the PIP, reflect by asking and notating. What have I observed? What have I done to ensure the employee understands what's expected? Am I certain the employee has had access to the information and resources they needed? So this is great for, have they been trained properly? If y'all have, maybe you implemented a new system or software, and they went through training, but maybe they're struggling a little bit on that software and not being able to get the right information in, or, resident information, tenant information, and there's been some errors. Have they had the proper training they needed in order to be successful in working in that software? So that would be a good example. What could be done differently? Did the employee understand the seriousness of not meeting the expectation, and has the issue occurred before with this person? What to say if they state they're not going to sign it? So we talked about this earlier. So I understand there may be some frustration and confusion about this process. I value you as a member of our team, and I want you to succeed. By refusing to sign this, you're telling me that you're not taking this seriously. Stay confident. Don't take it personal. Don't get frustrated, and be empathetic. So, of course, we have 100 different personalities when we're working with different employees across the organization. And everybody handles things a little bit differently. Maybe this is the first time in 15 years of somebody's career that they're being written up or have a performance improvement plan put in place. So they're maybe feel a little bit offended, right? Always have that open line of communication to make sure that they understand you as the manager, you're helping them do their job, and you want them to succeed. So, if they're not going to sign it, that's okay too. We've had that. We just move forward. But it does kind of give you a great idea on where that employee is. A lot of times too, you got to think about the circumstance. If it's a long-term employee, you're probably going to retain them. If it's a short-term employee and you put them on a PIP, chances are you're probably going to expect that they're going to leave, or it's potentially could lead up to corrective action up to termination. Practice. So using these forms, practice filling out the corrective action and PIP. An employee has not been compliant with attendance policy, tardiness, etc. If possible, practice a discussion with the partner, take turns being the supervisor and employee, share any best practices you may have with your partner and the group. So this is, when y'all maybe are having manager meetings, that if you have an employee and you need to discuss kind of how to handle it, that would be a great time to, maybe discuss that with your colleagues. Well, here, so when HR gets involved, It's not necessarily that you have to reach out to us when, you've got an employee that's coming in late, you know, 5 days in a row, right? Um, you can handle that as the manager. Not that I'm not saying you can always reach out to us. We're here to help you. But from a, documentation standpoint, you want to really, make sure that HR is involved when it comes to accommodations, religious, medical, ADA, that, disability, Americans Disability Act, requests for family or medical leave, significant changes to the job duties, demotions. Demotions is definitely, something we want to document clearly. Promotions, harassment or discrimination claims, final written warnings, misconduct or policy violations, layoffs, and terminations. So we're always here to help and review the documents that you have for corrective action. I'm going to go ahead and do this where I can see if there's any chats. Um, so, if you aren't really sure and you have an employee that's performance is declining, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help, and we'll be happy to do your corrective action and PIP with you as well. Letty, I need help with training counsel for my leasing. We'll help you. Okay, perfect. Yeah, Letty, we can set up a time to talk and we can go over that for sure. All right. Do y'all have any questions? That was a pretty
Any
quick training.
questions? I know.
Did that cover everything you would like to cover? Is there anything else, Caitlin, you want to discuss?
Yeah, so I think just on feedback from managers, they kind of struggle and everybody's different. Everybody's dealing with different people with different temperatures, right? And I definitely feel that we could all across the board do a little bit better. But I think it starts you guys with having the initial conversation, sitting down with them. A lot of you guys will get frustrated and call me, which is fine, right? But I don't like to immediately step in because when an employee, right, they're having this issue, you're frustrated with them, you call me, and I think, 8 times out of 10, you guys probably want me to step in and fix it. Not that I do not want to, you guys, but when I step in at that point, then they feel threatened, they feel betrayed. They feel like, oh my gosh, now the big boss is coming for me. Like this wasn't a big deal. They're embarrassed, right? And there's all these feelings that happen. And I think sometimes that we maybe overdo it doing that. And we shouldn't necessarily bring it to that point yet, especially after before you guys sit down and talk with them. So just know going forward, guys, when you guys are calling me with problems, I'm probably going to say, okay, let's sit down and talk to them about it. I know we have one employee that sometimes she's a little feisty, right? She's a little feisty with the residents and she comes off really firm and sometimes it gets worse. And I think it's just really important for you guys to sit down with these people one on one. How are you doing? How are things going for you? I want to have a conversation. Always tell them what they're doing well. Okay, I really believe in sandwiching those types of initial conversations. Let them know, hey, well, you're doing really great here. I appreciate that you do this, but here's something I'm noticing lately, and we need to talk about it. What's causing it? Here are some specific examples. So anytime you guys come to me with something, I always ask you, give me an example, right? You have to have a solid example when you're sitting down with people so you can directly point out and identify what happened and what caused, the conversation to happen. And there may be several instances, right? But be ready to have the facts, as Rory has mentioned, be able to share with them exactly what happened and get their feedback. Sometimes things are one sided. You don't see the whole conversation or the whole incident. There's a lot of times I see that, you guys, when I talk to employees. They're like, well, this also happened, and they're like, well, did they know this? So just doing that investigation, I know it takes time, but it's so important in finding out and identifying what happened so that we can plan ahead and make sure that going forward we can correct it and we can correct the necessary people. One thing I'll say, I know today's world is different from 10 years ago. So I know you guys are busy. I know a lot of corporate people forget how busy it is to be on site. Okay, I vowed when I took this position, I would never forget what it's like to be an on-site employee. Okay, and I still am aware. I will tell you some feedback you guys will get when having those corrective action conversations or making those pips with your office teams and even maintenance. They may say, I don't have time to do it, right? And it's really important for you guys to be able to step in and say, okay, not that I want to micromanage you, but let's talk about your task. Let me get more involved. Let me insert myself so I can directly supervise what's happening so that I can give you some feedback or some help. Because there may be some instances, guys, where you have overloaded the employee, right? Sometimes they may not have enough time in the day, but other times, and most of the time, it's a time management issue. Okay, and I have found that a bunch of times when I'm having staff saying, "Hey, I can't do this. I don't have time." When I sit there, when I involve myself, when I watch it, when I micromanage them for a bit, again, this is just the discovery period. You will find, oh, hey, instead of doing it this way, let's try it this way. Let's maybe delegate this out. So just know as managers that is kind of a role you guys will play whenever those conversations come up. And again, when you guys come to me with employee concerns, frustrations, I absolutely will help you guys out. I definitely want to review anything you're going to put out to your employees, right? Any counseling or PIPs. But I'm always going to ask you for a specific example, and I'm going to ask you if you've talked to them about it. Okay. So just know that. But do not let employee behavior get away from you. I've had a few instances where managers will call me and they're like, enough is enough. I cannot work with this person. They need to go today. And I had no idea there was any frustration building up, right? There was no documentation being done, lots of verbal conversations, but no written follow up. And those kinds of things will put you behind the eight ball. And then it will just intensify the frustration. And then it will be really hard for either of you, right, to move forward and work together. And that's the whole goal here. So just make sure you guys are being diligent. If you guys need help, you need some feedback, need some advice, please, of course, call me. You guys can reach out to Magnet as well. We're here to help you guys, but we've definitely got to get just a little bit better. And just keeping in mind, too, as well, one example I had, and I won't share the details, you guys are all having your weekly meetings. Even if you've just got two people, you should still be following that sheet, our weekly meeting sheet. And that documents what are the maintenance topics, what are the office topics, and giving your employees an opportunity to tell you what they need from you, what you guys need from us, right? So those are so important. I know it feels like, oh my gosh, another report. Not that we have that many, but just making sure you guys are doing that because that will give your employees a chance to speak out in a group setting. Now, one example we had, there was a specific employee that maybe what had given his phone number to a resident or two, right? And we don't do that. We don't allow that. We don't allow fraternization with the residents. But most importantly, we do not ever want residents calling one employee's personal number for any business related matters, especially if that employee was to leave, right? So the manager was like, okay, I'm going to mention this in my meeting. However, because this was an isolated one person situation and scenario, okay, typically across the board, everybody understands that that's a big no no. You don't do that. That's something that we all know in our positions. Instead of addressing it in the group setting, which would have made that employee feel like everybody knew his business, right? It was something that he, was handled with him and he did. He would have felt attacked in the setting. So because that was an isolated event, she did pull that person in individually and talk to them. And the employee said, well, I bought something from them. And that's how they got my number. And now they're wanting to call me for personal business. So I blocked them, right? So was that wrong? I want to get your feedback. Do you guys think that employee was wrong? Paul says yes.
Yes. I say
Yeah.
yes too. I've seen it
Yeah.
happen before.
Yeah. See, okay. So I agree, right? Kind of is crossing that line of fraternizing with the residents and sharing that personal information, which would then lead to the inevitable, right? Which is calling for business on a personal phone.
Yeah. Conflict of
Do I
interest for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Did that employee maliciously, intentionally break the policy? No. But was it still a broken policy? Yes. So it still rendered a conversation. And I think going forward, setting that expectation was the right thing to do. So again, just be mindful of that. Some things are better one-on-one. Some things are a blanket that everybody should be made aware of, and using those weekly meetings and those sheets where everybody signs in saying they sat in on the meeting and documenting everything will definitely be helpful when you're having to do these counseling sessions. And I'll tell you guys, Letty does the best. She really shines here. I'll have to circulate an example of her team meeting sheet. Letty, you do a really good job. She documents everything, goes through all the numbers with her team so that even the porter knows, oh my gosh, we're $30,000 behind on income, right? Because that information is important. But she has her team sign. She documents all the topics for maintenance, leasing, office, and she sets the goals there, and everybody signs saying yes, they were part of that meeting. So
Good job. No, that was great, Caitlin. A lot of good information there for the managers. And I think, Caitlin, you've chosen all of your managers because they are good at what they do and they are good managers. We want to make sure that y'all have the tools and resources you need and that knowledge to be able to be successful in your role and help grow your location, right? And meet the goals that the corporate office has for each of the properties. And, make sure you do have a solid team in place because obviously the more cohesive team you have, the more successful you're going to be at that property.
and the more opportunity you guys have for personal growth. As you guys know, USPC definitely believes in promoting from within. You guys all know I was an assistant manager with USPC. What year is it? 25. So like 8, 9 years ago, and now I run the company. So I think that's a pretty solid statement that we truly do believe in empowering our employees and getting you guys to your professional goals. And this is a big one, especially when you take that next step, either to a bigger property and you're managing more people, whether you go to a district position or a regional. This is going to be a very big deal that you are going to deal with every day. So we definitely just want to get you trained, comfortable in dealing with people and empowering them, and training them up to Rory's point and getting them ready for the next step in their career.
Yeah. I put my direct line if y'all don't have it. I think it's mostly on my email as well, but um feel free, reach out anytime. Even if it's a Saturday, right? Text me if you need something urgently, because there are a lot of times I may be out in the field at meetings or meeting with clients. So, definitely text me and say it's urgent, I need you, and I can, work around whatever I have going on and we can chat.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much, Magnet. This was super helpful. Thank you guys, team, for
All
taking
right.
time out of your busy day to be here with us.
Yes, thank y'all. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.